Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, and should we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, as my Joy-Con did not want to press A there for a second, but I'm going to chalk it up to a, pepcac issue. Because why am I going to blame my technology? Technology does no wrong. It is only the user who does wrong. A bad carpenter blames his tools. I don't know what I was going with. A bad gamer blames his controller. Anyway, I don't know what I was going with, to be perfectly honest. What should we talk about today? Yeah, I suppose I can talk about something which was very immediately on my mind, is the fact that the friend was like, hey, let's go do something Saturday, and I was like, sure, and then one of them was like, hey, there's a new Ant-Man movie, we can go see that, and I was like, oh, the new Puss in Boots movie is also pretty good, and we'll continue out in a second. And hey everyone, right now in Fawnhollow, 6:08 PM on Friday, January 27th, 2023. So yeah, he was like, new Ant-Man movies come out, let's go watch that maybe. And I was like, oh yeah, the new Puss in Boots movies also out, maybe we could also watch that, or not also watch out, but optionally as a different option. And I was like, oh wait a minute, the Puss in Boots movie isn't out in the UK. Turns out it's already been out in America, which is why I recommended it. It's because apparently it's really good, which is surprising. Because I wouldn't say Shrek is particularly, we seem to keep above ones. I wouldn't say, no, I mean, Shrek and Shrek 2, and definitely classic Shrek Third, is fine from what I record, and all the others are sort of just like rubbish. And the first Puss in Boots movie, I think the general consensus was like, it was okay, but like, wait, whose birthday was that? Lily's, was it? Yes, okay. It was fine, but it wasn't like anything particularly extraordinary. But anyway, there's a new movie, Puss in Boots 2, otherwise known as Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, coming out, and it's interesting because it actually initially caught my eye when I first saw the trailer. I don't think it was the first trailer, because didn't it have a first trailer and then it like they delayed it to like redo its style or something, or like something happened where I swear it didn't always have like this initially painterly style. But anyway, I saw the trailer of it just sort of randomly. I don't remember necessarily why. I think maybe I saw on Twitter people were like, whoa, have you not seen the new Puss in Boots trailer movie? The trailer, it's cool. I remember looking at it. If you haven't seen it yourself, it's got a very interesting sort of like painterly style to it, a la like, not quite to the extent of Riot Arcane, but it's got like that sort of like painterly sort of aspect to it. It's also kind of like Into the Spider-Verse, which is very much a sort of herald in the movie department of animated movies with a very sort of unique stylistic choice, I suppose. Anyway, it's got that sort of style, which is why I was like sort of drawn to it. I was like, even if this movie isn't very good, I'm so happy that they've taken like this directional leap in movies, because for the past like whatever many years or so, been very much obviously animated movies tend to be kind of forefronted by Disney, and I was going to say Disney and Pixar, but Pixar is part of Disney now, and like I know DreamWorks, I suppose, that sort of thing with it. It's all this sort of like, I'm not going to say realistic, because obviously you don't look at like The Incredibles and be like, whoa, that's so realistic, and people genuinely look like that. People don't. It's stylized, of course, but stylized sort of realism, I suppose. Whereas everything, all the characters are very stylized, but they're like portrayed in a very realistic way, like such that you can see like, I think the best example is like in Encanto, like you can actually go see it for yourself, because it's during the song, Luisa's song, what's it called, Surface Pressure. You can actually see like where the little like fuzz hairs on the back of her neck, and the way they're like, I'm not sure if refract is the right word, but sort of like get highlighted in light. There's like just insane amount of detail in the realism of these like realism and realistic aspects, I suppose, of these animated movies. Sort of like straying further and further away from a stylistic style, which is both good and bad in its own right. I think it's an interesting direction, but of course, again, things tend to get stale if it's the only direction that's been going in for so long. So I'm pretty happy, and I loved Into the Spider-Verse when it first came out. Like, I don't really care all that much about like Marvel. Okay, I should say I care about approximately indifference. I'm positively indifferent to Marvel movies and superhero movies out in general, but Into the Spider-Verse really intrigued me, because I was like, this is a really cool art style. We watched it and I was like, this is not only a really cool art style, it's a fantastic execution on it, and it's a good movie, like, or to boot. This is a fantastic package all wrapped up in one. So I'm glad that anytime there's some experimentation which sees commercial success, I'm just like, yes, because now business executives are going to look at that, and instead of being like, oh, we're going to do the safe and boring thing every single time, and making like safe money that way, we're going to take a chance where we can, someone's shown that the experimentation does work, and we can make money from that as well. So I know that's such like a reductive business way to look at it, but it's like, you got to play the hand which is dealt. me as a consumer, I'm not in charge of these business directions, so I can only hope that sometimes corporations will just be like, oh, you know, we're going to do the experimental thing. So at least for this like short period for a while, when people are experimenting with this new, very stylistic, cartoony, painterly, I suppose, cartoony style in animated media, we'll be like, yes, something new, until this gets boring, and then we'll be vying for something new, I suppose, after that. But it's you know, you're on the honeymoon phase, you know, don't think too much about it. Well, actually, that's not good life advice. Don't follow that advice for literally anything else. In relationships, hopefully you thought a lot of, you know, especially in relationships, hopefully you thought a lot about it before getting to the honeymoon phase in the first place. But, you know, yeah, that's that, I suppose. But yeah, anyway, it turns out that Puss in Boots is not even released yet, and neither is the Ant-Man movie, so we actually can't see them tomorrow, which is for Saturday, which is, you know, a shame, certainly, but not the worst thing in the world, obviously. There's infinite amount of things to be doing at all times, but it's just strange, because it was released, like, back in December or something, for, like, US new Puss in Boots movie, because I've been hearing so much about it ever since it was released. I was like, this is a movie I want to go see, even, you know, and I tend to not really go out and see movies all that often, so it would just be something I'd bring up if a friend wants to go see a movie, probably as an option, as a field an option, not like what, not like a force, but if it's like a, you know, I can't think of many movies I've made my friends go watch. I think the only one I particularly suggested were both Frozen and Encanto, were the only two, because they were very well received at the time. Oh, they still are. They're still pretty good movies, and let's be real. But the rest of them, I'm just all like, yeah, I'll watch anything. Oh, Hereditary, I think, was one as well. But anyway, yeah, it's not even out yet, but it's wild how big the difference is. And because it's not often the case anymore. Like, a lot of things nowadays are very much going for, like, simultaneous global releases. I don't know why necessarily. Maybe it looks better, like, statistically, when it's like, oh, look how much money we made in this, like, weekend or whatever, because you're pooling literally all demographics all at the same time. So it kind of surprised me seeing that, being like, oh, this movie's not out yet. The Ant-Man movie's not out because it just hasn't been released, I don't think. But it surprised me that, like, a big, like, corporation released a movie in, like, staggered, like, sections, I suppose, depending on the region. That doesn't really happen anymore. Most commonly it happens always with, like, video games, but, like, nowadays it's sort of a thing of a past. And I'm not going to say totally a thing of a past, but because of, like, a lot of services, you buy things online. Most of the time the games just kind of get released on the same day, or, like, you know, give or take time zones, certainly, which is, you know, fine. But certainly when I was growing up, at least, like, all video games basically were released on, like, staggered schedules and, like, different regions. Like, it was always, like, at least the games I played were always, of course, Nintendo games. So they always released first in Japan, then North America, then Europe will get it, and then it would be the other countries or continents or regions, you know, depending on how they split it up. But you know, those are generally the big ones. It was always Japan, America, Europe, in that order. And then sometimes, you know, you get game releases which come out in Europe first, and I'm always like, whoa, how did this happen? But I feel like that was always very much a common thing. But nowadays, that's basically, like, dead. You know, especially because I'd imagine a lot of games are sort of like multiplayer games, and which, well, actually, it's not like true. I was going to say multiplayer games, which would field players from all over the world, but that's not true, is it? Because very much on multiplayer games, you kind of play within your own region, because that's, otherwise you'll get lag, essentially. You can't guarantee that people have good enough internet to be able to do, like, cross-continental connections. Well, cross-continental connections for video games which require much faster response rates, of course. So it just sort of surprised me. I was like, wow, like, I don't know why this would be the case necessarily. My guess is of probably licensing issues. I know that's always a very big thing pervading a lot of different industries, isn't that, like, different laws and regulations. Normally with data protection, which doesn't really matter as much with movies, I'd think. Maybe it's to do with marketing, maybe it's to do with, like, license agreements with the cinemas and broadcasting details, etc, etc. I don't really know. I assume that's the case, but it just sort of surprised me, because I was like, I haven't actually thought about, like, staggered release windows for, like, ages. And I mean, I think a big thing is the fact that a lot of these games are online are, like, services now. Like, can you imagine, like, I mean, it probably does happen. I can't think of what an example on top of my head, but, like, a game being released on Steam or whatever, but, like, oh, you know, it's only released to, like, North America right now. All the other places just sort of had to wait. Like, it doesn't really happen all that much. And I feel like people are very much trying to get them. And at least to me, intrinsically, it makes sense to release it in all regions at once, because then you basically want that huge boost of, like, buzz about it, right? To try and like hit record numbers or whatever, and then it will slowly trail off rather than having a reasonable boost and then followed up by like mini boosts over and over and over again. Or maybe, I don't know, it's better the other way because it builds up a sort of like tension and then you get more people hyped up and interested about it. But it's sort of like a sweet point where you actually had to hit that like rolling hype, otherwise you'll just sort of miss a bandwagon and people will just be like, it just took too long to come out for me to actually buy it in the first place. That's how I think, at least. I don't know. I feel like it makes more sense to me for simultaneous releases. Is that a thing? Let's see. Was New Horizons a simultaneous release? But give or take, of course, time zones. Not Animal Crossing. Not literal New Horizons in space. 20th of March 2020? Yeah, it just seems like it was released worldwide March 2020. Like, is there a real reasoning? Is it just because of a prevalence of online release like platforms and schedules that people just, well, I shouldn't say people, it's not like people, well, I guess people are in charge of the decision, but you know what I mean, that have caused release dates to just basically be worldwide simultaneously? I mean, I think it's certainly all for the better, mind you. If there's no particular reason for them to be staggered, it certainly feels a lot better as a consumer, I suppose, to be able to play it at the same time that other people are playing it, while, you know, the buzz and the hype and the interest is still there. I mean, quite possibly you could stagger it by a couple of days to sort of generate interest. I don't know what really the sweet spot is, I suppose, with regards to that. My guess would be 1 week. So you, like, I don't know, release it in the most interested demographic first for a week, so they can generate the buzz. And then a week later, release it in the most profitable one, or the next most interested demographic, and then you on the third one, you just like release it worldwide, because then you sort of like build up that hype, you know. Or like, what if you had like a really niche game, like Animal Crossing is about niche, I suppose, but like a new release in Japan where it's super popular, and then there's that, oh, you know, now hype generating around it. Release it in North America. Actually, I'd assume Europe's actually a bigger demographic than just North America. Is that true? I genuinely, I'm not actually sure. But my hunch is there's more people in Europe than there are in North America, but I don't know if that's true. Population of Europe. 764 million. Population of North America. 579 million. Yeah, okay. Seems plausible at the very least. I don't know for certain. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not a marketer, so I genuinely got no clue about like the golden rules, I suppose, when it comes to these sort of things. But it's just like these release schedules, you know. Worldwide releases, I suppose. It's just almost weird to not see them be worldwide releases now. Actually, let's look up some other popular movies, like Avatar 2. Was that released worldwide? I was saying, I keep Joy-Con drift. It was actually released at different times. That's crazy. It was released in London first, December 6th, 2022. And then US got it 10 years later. 10 days later. 10 years would be a bit much. I didn't know that. I wonder why. I wonder why London was released first, necessarily. I wonder if they do some sort of test run thing where it's sort of like, oh, you know, we're going to learn from the experience of this release in a different like region first, and then, you know, use that data to help us with the other releases. But I would have thought at that point it's like too late. Like a difference of 10 days is probably not enough time to make like a big overhaul in your like campaign / marketing / your promotions, right? I don't know. I've got to assume, well, I mean, to be fair, 10 days is basically that week-long sweet spot, which I've theorized about. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Let's look at some Marvel stuff. Like, what's the news? Black Panther Wakanda Forever. 26th of October for Hollywood. November 11th for United States. I don't know. Maybe it's a lot more common in movies than it is in video games nowadays, which is fair, you know, that both I wouldn't know, and, well, I don't know whether that is or not, I suppose. Because, you know, movies is a physical thing which takes place in that country, right? So, you know, you're going to have to make it work whatever the cinema, like, release schedules are, you know, and that sort of thing. While video games, I guess, don't really have that strict competition necessarily. It's like, it's more dependent on the user's access to a console in the first place, rather than you know, like a licensing issue with cinemas. Don't know if any of that's true, by the way. If you work in that industry, feel free to enlighten me. I can't imagine there's many people working in the movie industry, watching my videos. But if you are, then fair enough. That's pretty cool, actually. You know, that's a big motivator to get a big demographic, you know, just like, or not big demographic, a big audience, just so I get like such a the higher chance of getting like people from all sorts of different demographics. So anytime I get like a really specific question, be like, I don't know anything about this, I wonder if someone can answer this. And then, you know, there's a high probability that someone who's watching can answer that. And I'll be like, yes. The shared knowledge of humankind. Of course, there's no verifiable way, I suppose, to, and you know, not no verifiable way, but, you know, humans like me can sometimes be a bit lazy when it comes to fact checking. So, you know, I'll probably just end up taking it as face value without actually, you know, with any regards to whether the veracity, I suppose, of a statement or not. Not the veracity. But yeah, I don't really know where I was going with this. Worldwide releases. Maybe that's what this episode will be called. I just have like a memory that like the Hamtaro games I used to play would like had staggered releases. Hamtaro, Heartbreak. I mean, I certainly understand with like certainly Hamtaro that was big in Japan or whatever, and staggered releases to the others because maybe there was no interest or you didn't plan to like localization. That's actually a big thing as well. Now I think about it. May 3rd, 2002, then April 8th, 2003, then June 27th, 2003. I wonder if it's just like the approval boards or whatever is just faster in America compared to Europe. Because like Europe, because the release often came later, they often get corrections in things. Like, because it's like the NTSC version or something is like the American version. This might only apply to Nintendo games. I don't really know what sort of audience, what sort of things this applies to. And the PAL version is the European one. I only know this because of Mario Party minigames. And people setting like world records literally on. For whatever reason, when I was younger, I used to look them up. And see like what the optimal strategies were to set these world records or whatever have you. And then like some games had like differences between the North American version and the Japanese version and the PAL version, which meant that like it was easier to set records in one than the other or something depending, which is just weird, I suppose. But I couldn't imagine there'd be much bug fixing going on between versions, but maybe there is, but maybe there genuinely is, I don't know. A lot of it I'd imagine is to do with approval boards and rating boards, you know, like probably not so much for a game like Hamtaro or Heartbreak, but for a game which has like violence in it, or like you know, other things which should not be depicted, but needs like a rating to go along with it to be depicted. Like different regions have different sort of like thresholds and guidelines of that sort of thing. Makes sense to me, I suppose. But yeah, I don't really know where I was going with this. Apparently Hamtaro Heartbreak's also in 2 languages. I hope one of them is Japanese, otherwise it's in Italian and Indonesian. That's wild. you would have thought it would be in Japanese as well, because, you know, released in Japan and all that, but what do I know, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. New Horizons in 28 languages, including Chinese, wow. Not in Japanese. Huh. Oh no, there we go. I don't know. Let's see. Games no longer staggered releases. We're not really Strangers card game from Amazon. Okay, that's not really what I was... Oh, it's because I think I said Strangers rather than staggered. Simultaneous staggered launch, Reddit, game dev. Alright. I guess this is a thing? I mean, that's true. Different platforms, I guess, can have staggered releases. It's not just not demographics, regions. Put out major consoles first. Steam or Dig developers suggest staggering your releases. Primary reason being that indies typically don't have resources to launch everywhere at once with great impact. Fair enough, you know. I didn't consider it from an indie perspective, but certainly from a big corporation perspective, you got that. You got the money to throw at it, right, to be able to have like a big impact, because you actually have a chance, I suppose, if all the hype like culminates at once. You hit like trending on like, you know, Twitter and like hit the news or whatever, etc., rather than having like small stories pop up here and there for different regions. I don't really know. Anyway, staggered releases. Well, what? Worldwide? No. Let's call it staggered releases. I think that's what the episode's going to be called. I don't know. It's not. I guess it's not really a bygone era so much to say, but you know, it's not a thing which I feel like I feel the effects of all that comedy nowadays. Who knows? Anyway, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope to see each other. Wait. if you like, comment, subscribe, share, then Twitter, Discord down below. Hope to see you again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.